Hi, I'm Warren Cornelius, and you're watching Breaking the Cycle on Open Studio. We'll be helping you make informed choices about the prevention, treatment, and recovery of substance addiction by consulting experienced professionals and finding evidence based solutions. Welcome. With us in studio today, we have Dr. Rehana Kader, a clinical psychologist who will help us understand what substance addiction is. Welcome, Rehana.
Thanks, Warren.
So, Rehana, I'm so excited to have you in the studio today.
hmm
Tell us a bit about more about yourself and your work in substance addiction.
Um, I'm also excited to be here today. I'm a clinical psychologist by profession.
Mhm.
Basically, my area of expertise is treating people with substance use disorders, which includes individuals and families and
Mhm.
communities as well. Part of my work involves teaching and training psychology intern students and postgraduate students in the postgraduate diploma in addictions at UCT. And I do a lot of international consultation as well, where I train doctors, psychiatrists, social workers, basically just any professional that's involved in substance use treatment disorders, training them in evidence-based
Mhm.
models in looking at treatment of people using substances. So yeah, that's what I do.
So you're quite experienced, sounds like it.
Well, I've done a fair amount of work in the area.
So Rihanna, let's get to what substance addiction is. It's like it's something that affects all of us,
Mm,
whether it be indirectly or directly. And but it's also a topic that's very rarely discussed, and it's very misunderstood as well.
mm,
Like many people feel that substance addiction is a choice or a model. For
mm,
some even think it's a model failing.
mm,
How true is that?
mm, mm. So, Warren, I think what I can tell you clearly and emphatically that it's not a moral failure. It's not that you have a weak personality. It's not that don't believe in God or
Mhm.
your faith is not strong enough. I guess that's the general myth out there, and hence a lot of frustration and misunderstanding of people that use substances. I mean, if we look according to the World Health Organization's definition of addiction, it's basically chronic relapse brain disease, and the focus is on looking at addiction as a brain disease, as a medical condition. And we have more and more recent research that has proven that one needs to treat it like any other medical condition and not see it as a moral failing or that you don't have a strong enough personality to deal um, with your addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me something, Rihanna. Like, what is the difference between substance abuse and addiction?
Hmm, hmm. Um, Well, there's been a lot of debate around using the word abuse, misuse, being addicted, etc. So I think with substance abuse, it's more abusing the substance, which means that you're using it in a larger dosage or in an increased dosage than required. So you're not using it for the purpose. So, for example, if a doctor has prescribed sleeping medication for
Yeah.
you and suggests that take 2 sleeping tablets at night, and wherein you decide, I'm going to take 4 sleeping tablets. And the next night you decide, I'm going to take 6. So that's abusing
Mm.
the medication because you're not using it for
Yeah.
the prescribed purpose.
Mhm.
Addiction, on the other hand, is where it's defined by you develop a level of tolerance for the medication and you need an increased amount of the substance to get the same
Yeah.
level of, let's call it high in such a way.
Mm.
And if you stop taking the substance or the drug, you experience withdrawal symptoms. There's lots of craving for it, and
Yeah.
your whole life is centered around or consumed by how you're going to get the substance of use. So I guess that's kind of the wide, broad definitions of what abuse and addicted
Mm.
means. Yeah.
So in my experience, I've noticed that a lot of people, like their entire lives revolved around getting and finding ways and means to use the substance. And like we were speaking about the cravings and the withdrawal, and
Mm,
so much time is spent on just obtaining the substance and using the
mm,
substance. Um, I wonder if we can speak about like what are the common, could we say, indicators that somebody has a substance use disorder or an addiction?
mm, mm. So, if we have to do a clinical diagnosis of someone that has a substance use disorder, basically there's 11 criteria that we would
Okay.
have to look for. And we would classify them. So, if they have 2 or more criteria, 2 or 3 criteria, one would say you have a mild substance use disorder. And you have 3 to 4 criteria, it's a moderate disorder. And obviously, if you have more than 5 criteria or 6 criteria, then you have a severe substance use disorder. And some of the criteria that one would look for is, for example, I spoke about the level of tolerance, which means that you need an increased amount of the substance that you use. The other characteristic or criteria would be that you experience withdrawal, and withdrawal could be physiological or physical withdrawal of the substance where your body needs it, or it can be or psychological withdrawal where you believe that you actually need the substance and you can't do without it. Another criteria would be that you spend most of your time trying to figure out how to get the substance that you use. An important criteria in defining when it is used, when it's a disorder, is that it has to be chronic, it has to be over 12 months, and you don't have the ability to actually stop using the drug. A lot of your money is spent on it. It significantly impairs your work functioning, your family relationships, your social relationships. So every area of your life is basically affected by.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to stop you there. We're just going to have to stop for an ad break. We'll be right back. Thanks. Welcome back to Breaking the Cycle on Open Studio. We're chatting with clinical psychologist Dr.Rehana Kader. Welcome back, Rehana. Rehana, why is it that some people get addicted and others don't?
Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting question. And one, there's like various factors that can attribute to why one person would become addicted to a substance and not. But let's start off with looking at the basic reasons. Scientists and researchers say that about 40 to 60% of people that are predisposed to becoming addicted is genetic. It's based on genetics. So, say for example, if your dad or somebody in your family, your mom, some parent or grandparent was abusing or addicted to a substance, that predisposes you and makes you more vulnerable than someone that comes from a family system that does not abuse the substances. Okay, so one is genetic, which plays a huge role. However, genetics doesn't completely define who you are. You can overcome these other factors as well. Peer pressure, that plays quite a huge role in becoming addicted, because if you are with a group of people that use substances on a regular basis and not just occasionally or recreationally, and you're exposed to it on a daily basis, that means it's quite regular use. So that is also leads you to perhaps being more prone to addiction. The duration of use, so the longer you use, the higher your risk of becoming addicted. And especially age. Age plays quite an important role. So, for example, we have youth and youngsters that start off by experimenting, and they may have a genetic predisposition, but because they're experimenting, it could then lead to them becoming addicted to substances. And the younger you start and the longer you use, the more addicted you become to a substance. And another important, I think, criteria is the route of administration, which we often overlook. So, for example, when I talk about route of administration, I mean, how do you take the substance? So, if you inhale, or for example, let's say smoking, or if you inhale tip, for example, or you snort cocaine, it takes 7 to 10 seconds to hit the brain. So the faster a substance or the quicker the substance hits your central nervous system or your brain, the quicker the high you get. And the quicker the high you get, the better you feel. So you get used to that rush and your brain gets addicted to it much quicker than, for example, if you swallow a Valium or a benzodiazepine, or you take alcohol. You know? Hence, that also leads to a quicker way of being addicted to a substance. Gender plays a role because women metabolize drugs and alcohol differently than men do. So that plays another role. Your home environment, socioeconomic issues, poverty. For example, if you come from an environment where there's a smoker haze next door, there's a shebeen on your right-hand side, easy accessibility of the substance. So they all play a role in making someone more vulnerable than the next
Rihanna, you were
person.
speaking about when a substance hits your brain, and what actually happens with a substance. Let's use, like, just for example, a stimulant like tuk, for example. What actually happens?
Mm. So I think that's the difference between substances or what we would call psychoactive substances.
Okay.
Psycho, so it hits your brain.
Okay.
And you spoke about TIC. So what happens when you take psychoactive substances? It affects the central nervous system of the brain, which is a part of your brain. Um, and specifically, it affects the reward part of your brain. So in medical terminologies, we would call it the limbic system or the limbic part of your brain.
Okay.
In layman terms, basically, it just means it hits the reward part of your brain.
Okay.
So, for example, when you exercise or when you eat something delicious or when you have sex or you do something that's gratifying, it hits the reward part of your brain and you want to repeat the behavior. It's just natural. If
Yeah.
something feels good, you want to do it
Of
again.
course.
So what psychoactive substances or what TIC does, it actually goes in the same neural pathways and goes into the same reward system part of the brain as does the other pleasurable
Okay.
activities. But the difference is, so when you eat or you exercise and you release this dopamine and endorphins, it's a slow release, and the satisfaction is very
Yeah.
slow and low key. Whereas when you take, for example, took a methamphetamine or a stimulant, you get a rush, you get a
Yeah.
surge of dopamine into your brain, and you get excited and this instant gratification, and you feel this wonderful high and this wonderful rush, and you get so excited
Yeah.
about it. So I think that's the difference, and hence people get addicted to stimulants or substances so quickly
Yeah.
because it gives you an instant high, and the high that you feel or the rush or the feel good feeling is like 100 times better than doing exercise.
Yeah.
So which one you're going to take?
So you spoke about stimulants. What other kinds of
Mm.
substances are there?
Mm. So stimulants is a category of drugs where it gives you a lot of energy, it makes you feel super confident, it keeps you awake. So often you would find people that work night shifts, that have high pressure jobs, that need to put long hours, would take stimulants.
Rihanna, I'm gonna have to cut you off there. We
Okay,
have to go to a break. We'll be right back.
sure.
Welcome back to Breaking the Cycle and Open Studio. We're chatting to Dr. Kader, clinical psychologist. Welcome back, Rihanna. Rihanna, I've been speaking about substance addiction and substance abuse all along, and I heard you spoke about substance use disorder. What's the difference?
Mm. I think we're trying to look at a more scientific way of understanding people that use
Hmm.
substances and looking at language and stigma as well. So, when you speak about an addict or somebody that's abusing
Yeah.
something, I mean, what comes to your mind when you say abuse? Already, you have a negative
Mm.
connotation. Or when someone says you're an addict, you know, immediately you don't think good about the
Yeah.
person and you think about the drugs, or he's a tip-copper
Mm.
or junkie, um, or I'm clean. What does clean mean? That you
Mm.
haven't taken substances.
Yeah.
But what's the opposite of clean? Does it implicate that you're dirty?
Mm.
And you're not.
Yeah.
So language is very powerful in terms of, and it's very loaded. So it's important that we as professionals speak a language that does not kind of discriminate and stigmatize
Mm.
people using substances. Hence, we talk about people first language.
Okay.
So when we say people first language, it's talking about people with a substance use disorder, or people using substance, or a person
Mm.
using alcohol.
Yeah.
So can you see it's the person and then the disorder?
Okay.
Then you are an alcoholic, because alcoholic becomes the word. And immediately there's a judgment
Mm.
put on you. And I think it's our role as professionals to educate people, and when we see people in treatment, to use the correct language so we destigmatize substance use
Mm.
or people using substances. And hence, if you do get treatment, and when you go into a treatment center, you would see it that, if you're a substance user, people automatically, even professionals, will have this attitude: he deserves what he's done, so I will rather treat the person with a heart attack and then I will treat that. But no, both are equally important.
Yeah.
So it's a medical condition. Therefore, we call it a brain disease.
Mm.
So we're looking at it more in a scientific manner than the myths around substance use. So language plays an important role in us understanding and almost having a sense of people that use substances
Mm.
are people as well
Yeah.
that have a medical condition.
So often we hear people speak about the addict or the tick-up and whatever. And when we hear this word addict, we often think, when we visualize, we think of somebody who's on the street, scuttling for money, and they really gone far down kind of thing, and there's no hope for those individuals. When in actual fact, people who use substances are people in your workplace, people who are living kind of, you would never suspect that this person's actually addicted to a substance. Um, what effect does stigma has on the treatment of people going for treatment, or just in general?
So often, because of the stigma that's attached to somebody that's using substance, because
Hmm.
of the words like addict and tukupa and junkie, people take longer to access treatment.
Yeah.
They would wait until it becomes almost a disorder or almost completely addicted to a
Yeah.
substance. I mean, if you look at any progression or pathogenesis of a disease, if you catch it in its early phase, the chances of the outcomes of the person getting better is much higher than you live in a disease or a condition right until the last or the end.
Yeah.
The chances are the treatment is not going to be as efficient as if the person came at the beginning of treatment.
Hmm.
So, okay, so stigma plays a big role in you accessing treatment, for example. The fact that it's associated with negativity, even health professionals don't give the equal status of
Yeah.
treatment. So if somebody comes to hospital, like I mentioned, you don't get the same level of treatment. It's not seen as a medical
Hmm.
condition. So we need to make sure that it's seen. And often people that use substances have co occurring conditions, which means they have possibly other conditions. So they might be HIV positive, they might have TB, they might be HIV positive, but they don't access any treatment
Mm.
because they're afraid of what the health professional is going to say, or they may not get the treatment that they need. So yes, this the fact of not going for treatment. Family discriminates
Yeah.
against you. Society does, because society sees, like you said, it's the person that's scuttling or the person on the
Mm.
street. But it goes wider than that.
Yeah.
There's no race, class, religious differences. It's across the board. You'll get the CEO that snips cocaine
Yeah.
because there's affordability
Mm.
in terms of your choice of drug that you use.
So often we find people who's been stigmatized, and they might, in the early stage of the addiction, realize they need help, but they don't access that help because they're afraid of what people might think of them. And you were speaking about, in the first segment, you were speaking about the prolonged use, and how it makes it that much more difficult for somebody to recover. Um, and I think that's the lesson we can take from this. What we just spoke about, the stigma. Um, do you think stigma plays a role in somebody's recovery? We spoke about treatment. What about recovery?
Mm. You know, recovery is so often there's a perception out there that you using substances, you go into treatment, and once you come out of treatment, boom,
Yeah.
you treated and you cured. However, recovery is a long road.
Mm.
It's a process. It's a never ending, it's ongoing, it's a lifelong
Yeah.
process. So one should not see recovery as a definitive or an end point.
Hmm.
So when one comes out of a clinic or a rehab, for example, after 21 days, it's just the start of your treatment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the start of your recovery process, and it's an ongoing process.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think the stigma or the misperception is that it's a once of treatment and it's fine. Remember the definition of substance use or addiction, it's a chronic, long term
Mm.
brain disease. So recovery is long term.
Mm.
Like with diabetes,
Of
you
course.
have to take your insulin for lifelong.
Yeah.
So recovery for a person using substances is lifelong.
Okay. So often people who come out of treatment and they back in their family and things are going quite well. That stigma that people experience, where people are watching them, you take stealing out my bag, and they get judged, before they
Mm,
even get a chance at actually recovery, and that kind of has such a negative impact on people in
mm,
recovery.
mm,
And I think that's something that we really have to look out for. And I think what you spoke about, the language and how we
mm,
speak about the disease of addiction is vitally important, and we need to
mm,
change our perspective on how we go about it
mm,
in the treatment and recovery
mm,
of substance addiction or
mm,
substance use disorders, as you explained earlier on.
mm,
Rihanna, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really learned such a lot,
mhm.
and it's always a pleasure chatting to you. I hope you can come again to the next season of our show. Um, join us next week on another episode of Breaking the Cycle on Open Studio. We'll be chatting about prevention. And if you're a parent and you have or you're a parent to be, and you're thinking about how can you avoid your child going the route of substance use, please join us.